you, Deacon. Okay, and I'm so sorry, in our closing prayer, I know we'll mention that, Jeremy, is our sister Ruth is taken to the ER, and we need to be prayerful for her, and we will pray for her in our closing prayer. Sister Barbara, I think, is supposedly headed back home. Still in rehab. Still in rehab. So, Sister Barbara, Sister Ruth. Yeah. So, get Brother Chris, if you would lead us in our closing prayer, and would you remember when we close, of course, Sister Ruth, Sister Barbara, and others, Sister Irma in the hospital, and others. Now, we're in this part 2 of this section in Mark's Gospel. Remember the big title, Encounters with Jesus. It's right there before you. Encounters with Jesus, Kingdom Instructions and Insights. And I said at the beginning of this study that it's always an instruction first if it's going to be an insight. If it doesn't instruct me, it will not give me the insight. Only when I allow the instruction, the teaching, the dogma, the doctrine, the admonition, the exhortation, the command, the expediency, the principle, the word, only when it hits my head and I receive it as an instruction does it become an insight. Something that just, where the light comes on and says, wow. So we're looking at these encounters with Jesus. These disciples are encountering Jesus for the first time as one who can commission them. This is new. This is new for them. This is the first time that they encounter him as the God who assigns. This is first. Been under his tutelage, under his teaching, his training. And now they are going to be sent out. And this is a whole new experience. It's a whole new experience. It's just like when you encounter God in your salvation. The joy, the celebration, the gratitude. But then you have to encounter him as the one who calls you to serve. That's a whole different experience. That's a whole different type of experience. And that's a whole potentially different type of resistance. Maybe I can't do it. Maybe I'm not the one. Maybe I don't have the time. Maybe I'm too busy. And then we have to grapple with the enemy who gives us what for some are palatable excuses. And you have to sort through those. You cannot serve as long as you serve without grappling, fighting excuses. You know that. And sometimes they are month to month, week to week. And you have to fight the enemy again. After a while, he'll flee from you. But you have to get into that space. So we're into this section of Jesus commissioning, assigning. We looked at the foundational truths about God's call. This evening, we want to go into, this is an extended lesson. We want to get into this section, learning how to serve in conditions that cause for sacrifice and self-denial. I don't know of any work in Christ that doesn't call for sacrifice and self-denial. I don't know of any work. I don't know anything that God asked us to do that doesn't call for some level of sacrifice. Remember the word, Jesus sacrificed and self-denial. So let's get into it. This is verses 7 through 11, and we won't get into all this section tonight, but I want to venture into it. He called the 12 to himself. Now, when you are reading this text, you may not spend time just on that section. Maybe that seems almost obvious, doesn't really need a lot of insight. Gain from God, glean from God. Well, he called them to himself. But no, let's slow down a little bit and understand the magnitude of that. I think it's very practical. It's the burden of preachers to try to extrapolate from the text things that are sometimes less obvious. And we have to make sure that they are not overlooked, these matters that you may overlook. Now, he called literally to call to oneself. That's literally. There's a call that you can call out to people, but not to you. Hey, watch out. Be careful. You're not calling them to you. You're calling them their attention to something that is beyond you, external to you. That's not this word. That's insightful. There's a call that you call people to somebody else. Go to that person over there. You're not pointing your attention to you, but to that person. Go into that room, that person. That's a call. That's not this word. That's not this word. This word, literally, I put it in quotations because that's how it's exegeted. That's how it's rightly understood. The call to oneself. Come here, guys. To be brought close in his physical presence. Here's the practicality of that. You're reading it. Very, very vital. Our work out among people must always begin in God's presence. Now that begins to hit my head and it should hit your head. So he says, come close. Come near. Come to me. That's the idea. He doesn't leave them a note. Doesn't send an intermediary that says, and he doesn't even send one of the apostles or disciples and says, the Lord has told me that we ought to go. No. I'm the source. He calls them to himself. I want to go deeper into this. I think you can grasp the significance of this. They're standing there, all 12 of them, in his presence. This is not the first time they have been called into his presence, neither would it be the last. But this is monumental because this is the first time he's sending them out on his mission, not their mission. And so I have to bring you into my up close and personal presence so that you would know this is about me. It's not about you. Don't get in the habit. Somebody in Christ needs to know this, of focusing on the horizontal without focusing on the vertical. The horizontal is looking out. Looking out. It's easy for me as somebody who has, I'm talking about if that's me or you, a commitment and a desire and a gift set that fits this situation. It's easy for me to say, boy, I need to look out and see that. Good for you. And the church will commend you for that. We've been looking for you. Oh, I'm glad you're looking at that need. And 90% of the focus of the church is look at the need. Look at the classes that need to be taught. Look at the people that need to be visited. Look at the ministry that needs to be carried out. 90% of the focus, well, maybe 80, 70, but more than it should be when it comes to the birth. I know what I'm talking about. I've been in church long enough how we assign people. We're going to get into that tonight. Don't get in the habit of focusing on the horizontal without focusing on the vertical. It's so easy to forget the vertical. And it's not bad intentions, bad motives, bad heart. It's just that I see the need. And I see me who can meet the need. But what I fail to see is the God who needs to back me, approve me, assign me, call me to it. That's often forgotten, dismissed. How many times I'll just throw this into the airways, we'll come back to it. Has somebody ever asked you when you said, listen, I want to do this for the church. I want to teach that class. I want to make this visit. I want to do, and somebody said, hold on. Have you talked to God about it? I guarantee you, not enough. Not enough. Man, we're excited for you. Come on. Man. And sometimes, especially if a teacher's been teaching for 5 years, man, I ain't thinking about you vertical right now. I just need me a substitute right now. I'm good. But wait a minute. Hold on. That's not how Jesus does it. That's not how Jesus carried it out. Hear me now. This is good stuff. Draw near to God, then go out. Don't go out without making sure that you have looked up. And some people says, man, that's discouraging people. That's overlooking the need. That's missing the opportunity. That may be sending the message that maybe they're not even needed. But I'll tell you really what that's doing. That's affirming the God of the big G who needs to be in that, and recognizing the God of the small g who's going to dog you, discourage you, and try to defeat you for being in it. Damn, that makes sense to me. And so I'm going into a whole space of church training that the church oftentimes doesn't venture into. I just need workers. I just need helpers. I just need people who are going to show up, sign your name. We put sheets on the dotted line. That's not how Jesus did it. And so already, I pray that he called the 12 to himself. It's not incidental. It's not coincidental. It's not accidental. It's not minimal. Now, watch this. I'm going to get to some questions there that I want us to answer. He called them to himself. God doesn't ordain our work for him if and when there is a spiritual distance and disconnection from his presence. That's really not the way God ordains people. I know you're drifting from it. I know you don't feel particularly close to me right now, but I'm ordaining you for that. That's really not God's way. Oh, I'm not saying that any of us are worthy and any of us are qualified. That's not the point. Or any of us can point to our own goodness over somebody else. All of us are unworthy. Whenever we're called and whenever we walk away from it, we're still unworthy. But we've got to recognize Jesus as the sender. That's what they have to get in line right now. So I want you to come close. I want you to draw near. Because I want you to know something, that I've got a work for you to do. Now, being in our God place, I'll use these words, place and space a lot, is very vital. It's a prerequisite to the call of God. It's a pre-requirement. David said in Psalm 16:11, profound verse, "You show me," David said, "the path of life." You show me. He tells us what God does, and then he shows us the space and place in which God does that. You show me how to do life. You show me how to be the man of God that you want me to be. But wait a minute, not at a distance. Here it is. In your presence is fullness of joy. At your right hand are pleasures forevermore. That's a proximity that David learned. You cannot read those Psalms and ever think that David wrote those disconnected from God, distant from God, AWOL, missing in action. No. Even when he's pouring out his frustrations, there is a crying out for God. That's why they can begin very wrong. No one cares for my soul. But then he comes back and talks about, I will bless the Lord at all times. Because he wrote those Psalms in the presence of God. Near to God. That's where you do your great work. Near to God. Psalms 139:7. He's asking rhetorically. He's not asking as if he doesn't know and God doesn't know. He says, exclamation point, where can I go from your spirit? I've learned that. Nowhere can I go from your spirit. Now, you've got to understand that because when the Bible speaks about Cain who went out from the presence of God, that's really significant. He went out from his God space and place. David is not speaking just about the omnipresence of God. He's speaking about where his heart is in relationship to God. Where can I go, God? I'm the man after your own heart. I'm always seeking. You're always receptive. Or where can I flee from your presence? Mark that. We're coming back to that word flee. So here it is. He called them to himself. He didn't call them to one another and say, think about what you all can do for me and then come and let me approve it. I mean, Peter talk all the time. Peter is not silent. And I can identify with Peter. Peter just talk. And Peter always got an idea. So Peter, get with these guys and come up with something for them to do. They seem a little lethargic. No, he calls them to himself. Now, distance from God is never set forth as a good thing. Study it in the scriptures. Never advocated as good. Even when God says, Moses, don't come close, that's a good thing. That's physical. That's not spiritual. That's spatial. That's not spiritual. You just don't bomb rush God. People die. But you spiritually connect with God. And by the way, looking back on it, this is not 2 weeks into their life with Christ. They've been with him. They've been in the presence of God for a moment. Be very careful that we don't overlook the zeal of the new convert, but be very careful that you don't exploit and manipulate without training the passion of the new convert. Be very careful that you don't. Let them get a taste of worship, a taste of the work. Mentor them. Bring them around slowly. Seeking distance from God is a leading indicator that all is not right in a walk with God. I'm making the case on this called them to himself. I guarantee you, we're already laying it out for you. You know where this is going. It has tremendous implications and application on how the church gets faithful and fruitful workers. So Genesis 3:8, they heard the sound of the Lord God walking in the garden in the cool of the day. There's a whole lot in that because God is a spirit. And we don't read where he's incarnate. We just have to dig into that and try to figure that out. But they heard his as it were, walking in the garden. In that deep, they heard was with him walking in the garden. It's a theophany, a divine manifestation of God, we believe. And watch this now. For the first time in their life, they did something. We have no reason to believe that they had any need to do this before. You know it. They hid themselves from the presence of God. That's new. It's a whole new experience. They introduced into the human family how to not walk with God, but hide from God. That first came from Adam and Eve. And the devil said, oh, okay, yeah, that's good. I'll use that one now. That's a good thing right there. I'll remember that. I'll now tempt people to hide and shut themselves off from God. And there's Jonah. Faithful, but in this moment, wayward, disobedient, bigoted, biased. I didn't want these folks to be saved in Nineveh. Not them folks. So he gets on a ship and arose to flee from the presence of God. It's never a good thing. You've got to be able to tell the preacher, tell the pastor, tell the deacon, tell the teacher, tell the worker, it's a good thing that you're going to do this, but how much time are you going to spend with God to perfect this? That's legitimate. That's needed. And I think, Jeremy, sometimes God is waiting for us to pop the question. And we don't pop the question because we got the faithful few in churches. And we assume that you are in the presence of God. That's a pretty big assumption. That is a pretty big assumption. So make sure, absolutely sure, read this with me, that your church work kicks off with sufficient time spent in God's presence. Now, wait a minute. I'm talking to me. I don't want you, I really don't say this to sound super spiritual because I'm not. And I certainly don't say it that you would now come and interrupt a moment. But every Sunday morning, before I come out here, I'm in my office on my knees telling God what I can't do. I'm telling you the truth. I can't do this. I really can't do it. I'm not even fit and qualified. I'm not. I just shut it off for a moment. Got to let him know what he knows, that I am not worthy. I am not qualified. I'm not all that I need to be. So use me, God. When you teach your class, don't forget to do that. Right.
I think maybe you're not telling them what I think you're accepting what he knows. Not like what I don't know, what I can't do. You're finally accepting that he already knows it, and you finally have accepted.
Wow.
That's more than like the other way.
Wow.
I can't do this, God.
Wow. I love that, Jeremy. I love that, Jeremy. Jeremy, because Jeremy, I'm going to tell you something. But what makes that so profound, Jeremy, it's kind of like a preacher that's interviewing for the work here. He's never going to tell man, I can't do it. I can't do it. I want to do it, but I'm the last one. I can't do it, man. I ain't got no qualification. I ain't got no. I can't do it. I can't do it. You say, well, think. At least he was honest. Next. At least he's honest. But you got to talk to God like that. You got to tell him what he already knows. Before I leave the church in singing, I've got to let him know I can't do this. I can't affect the outcome that only you can give. I can't defeat the devil the way you can do it. I can't get people's attention the way you can do it. And if I've said this once, I've said it many, many times. The only thing God can't handle is that you won't tell him what he already knows. He says, man, that's the problem I have with you. You won't tell me what I already know. I mean, I got a problem with that, man. Why don't you just learn to talk to me about what I already know? Keep it 100 with me, as the young people say. That's not a put down, that's a step up. So, here it is. Let us draw near with a true heart. Get our heart right when we step into this ministry. When I step into this assignment. When the church says you're the person, tell God, only by grace. Only by grace. I'm so unworthy. You know, the Bible is a 2-chapter book. Old Testament, you can't do it. The New Testament, God can do it. 2 chapters. You can't do it, God can. That's the Bible. 2 chapters. That's the Bible story. You can't, I can. That's what God says. So here it is. Here it is. I'm coming to the questions here. Because Moses had not validated God's call on his life in God's presence, it cost him 40 years in the wilderness. That's fact. Yeah, you can say, well, that's the plan of God anyway. Well, wait a minute. Hold on now. That's permission, but you think God wanted him to go out whacking people? I don't think that's in God's plan. I don't think God ever wants you to get ahead of anybody, or take out anybody without his commission, or ordain yourself. And you know, the guy said, in Ebonics, who you be? I mean, man, who made you a ruler and a judge? But I said, Moses, whoa, man, you're going to kill me like you're going to Egypt? Whoa. You heard that. because he assumed that the brethren would accept his, not without God. Moses, you're going to have a hard enough time for them to keep from lynching you with God. That's coming in the wilderness. You know what is going without God. You're toast. Fight him up.
I think you kind of missed it, but Moses' response or non-response is actually cost the Israelites 40 years.
Oh, my stars. That's so deep. That's so deep. Oh, Jeremy, you're in your A game. But you know what's so amazing? That now he, wow, I can do it. Stand down, God. 40 years later, I ain't the man now. Humility. I can't even talk. Come on, man. You're highly educated. What you talking about? Okay, I'll send Aaron. Study your Bible and see when Aaron ever became the spokesman. I'll play that game. Come on, okay, get Aaron. If you need a sidekick, but you're going to do the talking. That's what it is, Aaron. You're the man. But now you've learned how to draw near to me. After 40 years. 40 is just symbolic of testing, right? 40 years of Jesus in the wilderness. 40 is symbolic of testing. So God does his good work with us, for us, through us, affirming his presence. I know I am trying to pull all the meat off this bone, but this is really where it begins, in the presence of God. I have to spend some time talking about the mission. If I was writing a commentary, I would be emphasizing this much on this line, because that's often missed. We preach sermons sometimes in our ability is not in the presence of God. We teach classes sometimes in our ability not in the presence of God. We do all kinds of things in our own ability not in the presence of God. And we have to learn what Jesus says, what God says in Deuteronomy, new generation. And the Lord, he is the one who goes before you, and he will be with you. He will not leave you or forsake you. And they got it. That old generation said, oh, well, we'll test you day by day, God, and see what we think about it. We're going to make judgments about you every day sitting in our tents. That didn't work out too good for them. So here it is. Our ministry, our work for God must begin privately in his presence before it goes publicly. Go private before you go public. I don't know of a team that doesn't practice before the season. Private. Before the season, we're practicing. You know that. We're getting ready. At first, before jumping into the glitz and glamour, that's what the devil makes it. In the public view of people's view, here it is, sacrifice and surrender yourself to God. Do that. Jesus is saying, don't forget, I'm sending you out. This is all about my call on your life. It's not about you. And so in John 6:71, Vern, this is what catches my attention. This is strong talk. Did I not choose you, the 12, and yet one of you is weak? One of you is fleshly? One of you has lost your first love? No. One of you are the diablos. Man, that's, oh, wow. Did he say that? That's what Jesus says. He called him the diablos. You know what I want to know? At what point did Judas start spending more time in the devil's presence than God's presence? It changed his whole view. Changed his whole perspective. Oh, I know there was a verse that said the devil entered in. That's a demarcation line. That's when he crossed over. Right here, my beloved sister.
Could be present physically, but absent.
Say that again, Mr.
It could be present, absent.
Sure.
There's a song that says your mind is, your body is here, but your mind is on the other side.
Sure.
And you find that even when people come to church, sometimes
Sure.
they get distracted.
Oh, this is deep what you're saying.
But one of the things that I want to say is that
This is good.
two songs I want to say, Jesus, I'm telling you, that's the song.
This is good.
But another song by this guy named Kevin Jones.
Yeah.
When I come to the end of myself,
Yeah.
Lord, carry me.
Oh, I love that.
If we can come to the end of ourselves,
Yeah.
that means when we are in the presence of God,
Yeah.
we are in the presence.
That's it. I like what you're saying, my beloved sister, because actually that's really what happened. I don't know how it works. I know how it works in my life and other people's. I don't know how it works with you. But at some point, what Jesus is saying began to mean less to Jesus. That's it. That's it. That's what you're saying. Just begin to mean less. This Bible class at some point begins to mean less to me. It begins to not hit me the way it used. That sermon doesn't hit me. That Bible reading doesn't really touch me the way it used to. That's a red flag. That's strong. Caution ahead. And that's what's happening. And so I want to raise these questions. Is your church assignment based on your experience in your church assignment? Was spirituality, standing right and living right with God, a high priority topic in your appointment? Think about that. This is good stuff that the church needs to know. Just let that, think about that. When you were called to teach, the shepherd, to be in your assignment, was spirituality, standing right and living right with God, was it somewhere at the level, I'm just being truthful, or was it not even a part of the conversation? You know what God says? That's not good training. That's not good appointment. Didn't say that your motives are corrupt and impure. It could be that you just are short-sighted, or, like I said, we just need workers. You have to work that on your own. If I have any indictment after all these years, and my spirituality at this point in the fourth quarter of my ministry has nothing to do with Bible college, school of preaching, none of it. Abraham Lincoln said it right. Every man after 40 is responsible for his own face. That's right. Yeah, take responsibility. But if I have any indictment, there's not enough spent on the preacher's personal life. I would say now, you probably need to have, we studied every book of the Bible, verse by verse. I'm telling you the truth. Genesis to Exodus, Deuteronomy, Leviticus, Joshua, Samuel, Kings, all of that. Ezra, Nehemiah, all through the prophets. Every book of the Bible, verse by verse. Verse by verse. And we need to know that. We need to know the word. We build a library, they taught us that. Build the tools. Of course, it's changed now. I went back to, where I started out, not Bible college, but school of preaching. And we had all these books and stuff, and I went back some years ago, and they had a little laptop sitting there. Man, this is neat. Clicking buttons. And these preachers are not building libraries like that anymore. They can Google it. Maybe that's good. Not old school. But we need to speak about the spirituality of that person. You see, that seems so intrusive. Well, it is intrusive. It is. but it's necessary. And was your job description dominantly about what you must do? But little, if any, discussion about what you must be. That's insightful. That's insightful. Right here.
Jesus said that one of the talking about prayer is how much more will God give you the Holy Spirit. You ask him.
Sure.
And when we're praying to God and we're saying, I can't do it, that gives all the glory, that allows God to have
All the glory to him. All the glory to him.
And when we're praying for spiritual things, we're saying we're not, then God's able to cause breakthroughs, to do what we couldn't do before because God has now enabled us because we're in touch with God. We let God be the leader of our lives.
Oh, man. Thank you so much, Todd. Todd, that's so rich. I'm telling you, my brother, this is a good study tonight. That's so rich. You know, when Paul, it's not in my notes, but when he was writing 2 Corinthians, which is the most autobiographical book of his letters, that book is all about his inadequacy, his insufficiency, even his thorn. That's what it's about. That's what he's writing about in 2 Corinthians. He's writing about not the gifted, endowed, able, competent. He's talking about I had to pray 3 times that God would get something. And many people would never have even thought that man was at that level. Not the venerable, honorable, exegete Paul. No, this man, no flaws, no warts, no wrinkles. Read 2 Corinthians. He says, no. In my library, there is a book on leadership called Leading with a Limp. It's a good read. It's a good read. I've read it. You got to lead with a limp. Jacob, you need a limp. He did, because Jacob said, man, I don't always need God. Man, I'm good. Even Esau said, man, you good. You good at it. Man, you can teach me some tricks. Shyster. And he had this ability to manipulate and exploit. He could. And finally, look, he's in a rock and a hard place. Esau, Laban coming in, man, I'm in a bad way here. He wrestled with God, but he wrestled with himself. And you know what he came out of that moment? He gave him a new name. Not Jacob, the saints, but Israel. He got a limp. You got to have a limp. Leaders, don't be afraid if you got a limp. Don't be afraid. People will give you a limp. That's a good thing. Circumstances will give you a limp. That's a good thing. People will hurt you. That's a good thing sometimes. People will question your motives. That's a good thing sometimes. People will have no regard for your motives to do right. That's a good thing sometimes. I'm telling you. It keeps you aware of a God that's bigger than you, better than you, who will bring you home to glory because you led with a limp. That's what you do. You serve with a limp. You preach with a limp. You clean the building with a limp. You do everything with a limp. You sing with a limp. And so, looking back, did you spend sufficient time with God? Our training going forward in this church should involve a manual. The elders know that. Everybody should be trained to do everything in spiritual formation and the strategy that is most effective. Well, we'll touch on the second part of this. And began to send them out 2 by 2. Send. This is the word apostello. You know that, apostolos. It's not the exact word, it's a derivative. To sin with the focus on being, now this is important, I'm not making this up. This is what the scholars say. To sin with the focus being on the one doing the sending. That's important. That's the focus. It strongly connects the sender to the one sent. The noun apostolos is one who is sent. But one who is sent implies a sender, who is greater than, wiser than. That's the focus of this commission. Now, 2 by 2 finally introduces the human element. All that we have looked at is the God element. And I'm going to tell you something, church. Can I tell you something? It's a shame that we learn some things too late. But maybe we learn them not too late if we learn them before we leave this world. Your ministry is always, how do you quantify it? 90% God, 10% you. That's what it is. And you know, can I be honest with you sometimes? Sometimes it's 100% God, and God, I can't even get there. I'm weak, I'm tired, I got a nasty attitude, I don't want to be here, I don't like nobody here, I don't want God to say, okay, I'm going to do it for you, but I'm going to have to carry you today. Right? Yeah, God, I am, yeah. But you can't stay like that. I want you to show up next week with a better attitude. 2 by 2 always strive for a working together unity. 2 by 2, not in ones, but not in threes. So this is 6 groups of 2. Is that right? Is my math right? 6 groups of 2. It's 12. 6 groups of 2. Don't expect the ideal many side-by-side workers. Just 2. No, I know what I'm talking about, church. Sometimes in certain ministry, you'll be good to find another person who work at the level you work. If I can just get, you know what I'm saying, and that's not self-righteous. That's just real. If I can just get somebody else at this level. It's a challenge. So 2 by 2 is real. Sometimes that's as good as it gets. 2 by 2. Now I want 8. I want, no. You'd be good if you get 2 by 2. At your level. At your level. Not self-righteousness, but your level of commitment. To be here, to show up. Right here.
Proverbs says that if one person does by himself, they will fall into a hole.
Oh, speak it, Pastor.
If 2 people go,
Speak it,
it
Pastor.
doesn't matter if you're here or here.
Speak it.
You're still going to be able to.
Speak it, Pastor. Speak it,
When
Pastor.
you're both-
Oh, man, I'm telling you what. See, now, not ones, but 2 by 2. So, God's presence and power defines the sufficient number. Did you catch what I'm saying here? God's presence and power defines the sufficient number. 2 people with God, that's enough. That's what I'm saying. 3 people with God, no, we need 18. No, with God, that's enough. In fact, he told Gideon, you got too many folks. Most of them are going to leave you anyway. Might as well make the cut right here and now. I told you about my brother Brandon. I didn't want to talk about my brother Brandon. I love Brandon. I tear for my brother Brandon, my big brother. I was talking about Brandon on the way into the Bible class. And I finally got Brandon to come out to the track team. I wasn't that man in the track. I was a basketball player. But the coach wanted me to do track. And I ran for it. But I finally got Brandon to go out. And I don't know. I told you about that. Man, it's the funniest thing ever. I'm just telling you. That Coach Sharp, that was his name, and he was Sharp. He said, we're going to start out light. We're going to start out with about 5-6 miles. We're going to start out light. And I finally got Brandon to come out. Brandon ran around that track right at the fence. I'm telling you, I'm not making it up. He didn't even say anything to me. He didn't say anything. He just took off right on out the fence, man. I got home and I said, Razor, man, you crazy. I ain't done no 5 or 6 miles. I'm out of here right here and now. Well, no, that's track. But sometimes you've got to know that God is going to test you before he tests your followers. He's going to test you. Can you handle it? So he puts them as, this is where we're going, in a situation that they're going to have to learn how to tough it. 2 by 2, Deuteronomy 17:6, the essential testimony of 2 or 3 witnesses, so they can corroborate it. This just goes back to the Old Testament here. Appreciate your reference to the Psalms or to the Proverbs, or Ecclesiastes. Now, the 2 by 2 number will facilitate some vital stuff. Come on, we're closing. Mutual learning. They're going to learn together, right? 2 by 2. Mutual strength and support. And again, let me just say before I go any further, not our 12 goal. No. Break it down. Break it down. 12 are going, but not all together. Mutual strength and support, 2 by 2. Mutual praying, that's what the principle you're talking about, 2. In that ditch. Mutual faithfulness, fruitfulness, and growth. That's it. Now I want to close with this, but we've got to come back to it next time. He gave them power over unclean spirits. Power is the Greek word exousia. It's not dunamis. Sometimes dunamis is used for power in the Greek, sometimes exousia. This is exousia, but watch this. Exousia is used in at least 2 ways. God's absolute and total authority, and it's used of delegated authority. A distinction can be made between exousia, which is exousia verb is existing authority, whether I exercise it or not. That's thought. That general has authority, whether he makes commands or not. He's got it. That's exousia. Dunamis is active ability to exert power. Power in action, which is really exousia carried out. Okay. Without exception, authority is exercised rightly or wrongly. And we want to go deeper into that. And even next time, talk about how it exclusively belongs to God and some other things we need to learn about exousia, how we exercise. This is a good study. This is a good lesson. And we haven't even begun to touch the hem of the garment. I appreciate your input. We're going to have a closing song and prayer. Christian is going to lead us in our closing prayer. Remember, our 2 sisters, Ruth and Barbara, is Irma, maybe others that you know of. Sister Linda is coming up for surgery in November. And we want to be mindful of her as well. Might be others. Okay, I don't know who's doing the prayer, but we're going to turn it over to them at this time.